The envelope sat on top of the usual Monday stack of junk mail, coupons, credit card offers, and a magazine I never finished. It had the Honda logo in the corner, and it was addressed to my wife, Emily Brooks. I opened it as the coffee steamed, thinking it was some promotional letter. The headline, in red letters, read, "Important Safety Recall Notice." The notice said Emily's 2023 Honda Accord had an issue with the passenger airbag and needed immediate service. There was a phone number to call and a suggestion to bring the car in right away. I felt a small twinge of annoyance at the interruption to the morning, but I put the letter down and kept going. Emily had left early for a client breakfast, and I didn't want to wake her. Still, the recall stuck in my mind. At 7:15, with the house quiet, I called the dealership. A man answered after the automated menu. "This is Tom Lewis in service. How can I help you?" he asked. I told him about the recall and read the VIN number from the letter. "Let me pull that up," Tom said. There was a soft sound of typing. "Okay, I've got it. And your name?" "Adam Brooks," I said. "It's my wife's car, Emily Brooks." There was a pause that sounded longer than it should. "Sir," he said, "careful. It shows the recall work was already done on that vehicle." The appointment was on November 18th. I felt the coffee cup slip slightly in my fingers. "When did she tell you she wanted it done?" "Actually, she brought the car in that afternoon with another gentleman," Tom said. His voice had an edge of discomfort. "He is listed as an alternate contact on the service ticket. He also handled payment for a couple of extra items." Tom read the name from the file, Jason Cole. The ticket had Emily's signature, and under it, someone else had signed as the alternate contact. Tom also handed me a photocopy of a driver's license. The photo was of a man with dark hair flecked with gray at the temples, a confident smile, and an address not far from ours. My head felt strange. Something small and ordinary, a service ticket, a payment record, had become a sharp corner. I drove to the dealership while my mind ran through simple questions. Why didn't Emily tell me? Who was Jason Cole? Was there a mistake? Tom had the papers waiting. He showed me the appointment time, the work performed, the signatures, and the payment record. The alternate contact section listed a phone number, an email, and a checked box that said spouse. The credit card receipt showed a Visa ending in 4829. It had Jason Cole's name next to it. This was not a small error. It was official business record, dash keeping, at home that night. The house felt too quiet. I put the service ticket on the kitchen table and sat down. My job as an operations manager trained me to gather facts before acting. At the plant, when something broke or a process failed, the first step was always the same. Document what happened, find patterns, verify sources. I decided to use the same method at home. I started with what I had. The dealership records were official. A photocopy of a driver's license, a signed ticket, a payment record. Those things could not be argued away as memory or emotion. I took photos with my phone and saved them. Then I searched the name on the license. Jason Cole. LinkedIn came up fast. The photo matched the driver's license. He worked as a senior account executive at Strategic Solutions, the same company where Emily worked. The profile showed he had joined the local office about 8 months earlier. Emily's name was in his connections. That was easy to find. Then I looked at public records and found a divorce filing for Jason Cole, finalized 4 months ago. He had recently started a new chapter. As I collected these pieces, a picture began to form. Jason moved into the area, began working closely with Emily. Their calendars started to overlap, and the small hints I had ignored before began to make sense. Emily had been traveling more than usual. She had been on frequent overnight trips. Her phone was never far from her hand. She had new charges on our joint card that felt out of character for her. It all fit together in a way that mattered. I checked our joint credit card statement. There were charges at upscale restaurants I did not recognize, hotel room upgrades, and bar charges late at night. There were also charges at an expensive salon downtown and a jewelry purchase that I had not seen. That one item alone, a $380 necklace from a boutique, felt like a sign of secret indulgence. I took screenshots and saved PDFs of the statements. There was another source of evidence I had access to because of a favor Emily had once asked me years ago. She had needed help reconciling expenses for a tax form, and I had set up and saved some login credentials on our family computer. I felt awkward using that access, but the facts seemed to call for it. In the company expense system, I found matching entries. The same restaurant receipts, often billed as client entertainment, appeared on Jason's expense report as well. Date for date, receipt for receipt, the pattern repeated. I made a timeline on my laptop. Month 1, Jason transferred to the local office. Month 2, Emily's travel increased. Month 3, Jason filed for divorce. Month 4, Jason's divorce finalized. Month 5, Emily's travel and expensive charges increase. Month 6, the dealership visit where Jason is listed as her alternate contact and pays for services. The pattern was plain. Even as I collected facts, my emotions ran hot and cold. There was a dull, cold hurt that rose each time I saw Emily's signature beside Jason's name. There was anger, a prickling sense of betrayal that came in waves. I kept these feelings at bay so I could do the practical things that mattered. If something had to be resolved, it would need careful work and clear evidence. I arranged a meeting with an attorney I trusted. His name was Brian Caldwell. Years before, he had helped me with a property contract, and I respected his clear way of handling difficult situations. We met in his office, and I laid out the file I had built. Brian read through everything with the steady attention of someone who had seen many similar cases. He did not judge. He took notes and asked direct questions. "This is thorough," he said. "This goes beyond suspicion. You have documentation. That helps a lot." He explained how divorce law worked in our state. It was a no-fault system, meaning you could file for divorce without proving adultery. But he also told me that the evidence I had could influence the settlement, especially where finances and asset division were concerned. Brian gave me practical advice. Secure joint bank accounts and credit cards. Document everything I did from now on. Avoid public confrontation. If I chose to file, be prepared for the process server to deliver the papers at her workplace. It would be public. He also warned me that the company would likely start its own review if legal papers referenced internal issues. I asked him about how long things might take. He said it could be months, but with good documentation, a negotiated settlement could come more quickly than a full court fight. Leaving Brian's office, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Relief because I had a professional who could guide me. Exhaustion because this meant the next steps would change everything. At home, I kept the folder locked on my computer and in a small cabinet. I moved with a kind of careful normalcy. Emily continued her busy schedule. We had short, polite conversations. Some nights she fell asleep on the couch, head on my shoulder, and I would listen to the soft rhythm of her breathing. I watched her move through our house and wondered how two people could share a life and not know how different their hearts had become. I chose a quiet Monday to sign the final papers. We had a standing joke that we did important things on Monday to start the week clean. That day, I drove to Brian's office and signed the official petition. My signature was steady. Once filed, the petition would be delivered to Emily at her office. Brian warned me the process server would hand her the papers in front of coworkers. He suggested I spend the next night at a friend's house. He believed an initial emotional reaction might lead to a confrontation I wanted to avoid. I packed a small duffel and told Emily I might be working late at the plant. My friend Paul offered me a guest room and a quiet kitchen. He had been through his own messy divorce and understood the practical side of such things. He didn't ask many questions. He put a beer in the fridge and left the guest room light on. It felt good to have someone I could lean on. The next morning, I sat at my desk and tried to act as if everything at work was normal. My phone buzzed at 9:30. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times and then answered. She sounded stunned and raw. "What is this?" she demanded. I was just served. You could have her voice broke. For a moment, we both struggled to find the right words. I said, "Little, you have counsel now," I told her. "We'll do this through lawyers." She pleaded for a chance to talk face to face. I told her to speak through our attorneys. It felt cold, but I wanted the process to remain controlled and fair. Her calls came again, then text messages that moved from anger to pleading. Each one I saved, as Brian had advised. Every message became part of the record. HR at Emily's company handled the internal investigation with methodical bluntness. They requested expense reports, client names, and travel logs. Emily came home from the first meeting, nervous and exhausted. She said the session had been formal and uncomfortable. She told me she had explained many of the trips as client work and that she never meant to hurt anyone. I believed that she felt conflicted, but the receipts and dates we had compiled did not change. The company placed Jason on administrative leave while they reviewed expense matches. The investigation compared receipts, dates, and the description of client entertainment. The result became a formal inquiry. Jason was terminated for violations of expense policy and for failing to disclose a relationship that presented a conflict. Emily was disciplined and ultimately removed from her director role. The decisions came from the company's policies and process. They were not personal revenge. They were the consequence of documented actions. I did not drive to Jason's apartment with the intention of confrontation. Still, curiosity pulled me there one afternoon. His address was in a tidy apartment complex. His car was in the assigned spot. I sat in my car for a while, feeling foolish. I told myself I was confirming evidence and not acting on emotion. After a little while, I drove back to the plant. Seeing his place did nothing to soothe me. It only made the story more real. The negotiation with Emily's lawyers surprised me. She wanted this handled quickly and quietly. She made an offer that was generous. I would keep the house and a larger share of retirement accounts. She would take responsibility for certain personal debts and the car lease. Brian said it was a fair deal and recommended we accept. We had a few rounds of conversation about details, who would keep certain furniture, how we would split retirement accounts, arrangements for our dogs' weekends. The lawyers handled most of the paperwork, but the small things were human and needed care. When the settlement was signed, the legal file closed in a quiet way. Emily packed her things carefully, taking clothing and personal items. There was no dramatic scene. There were thoughtful boxings and a small note that read, "I'm sorry." I wrote back, "I need time." That was all. She moved into a small apartment across town. The house felt empty and then calm. The quiet felt heavier at first, then steadier. The work of rebuilding began in small steps. I joined a cycling club and started riding on weekend mornings. I bought new tools and organized my garage shelf by shelf. I took to making nightly notes about the day, small things that helped me track progress. Friends brought meals, family checked in. Paul came over with simple dinner and never asked prying questions. My sister drove 2 hours to sit with me and listen. Those small acts stitched up a part of me that had been torn. One afternoon, months after the settlement, I ran into Emily at a grocery store. She looked tired and smaller than I remembered. We stood in an aisle of canned soup under the store's harsh lights and spoke for a few minutes. She said, "I made terrible choices." I listened and said, simply, "I know." There was no need for a long conversation. We were both working on our own lives. Time does a lot of quiet work. I returned to the plant with renewed focus and took on more responsibility. I accepted a promotion to regional director. The new role gave me travel and new teams to support. It also helped me pour energy into something constructive. I learned to take pride in small gains. The first time I saw Jason after everything was over, it was in a small, professional setting. He had trouble finding similar work because a termination for cause is a hard thing to explain to future employers. I felt no triumph. I felt only that the painful chapter had closed and that consequences had followed the facts. Meeting Claire was slow and gentle. We first spoke at an industry conference about a production issue and a small process improvement. She had a clear way of explaining things and a laugh that felt honest. Over time, we had coffee, then dinners, then longer talks. Claire had been through a difficult divorce herself, and she knew how to let healing happen at its own pace. We cooked together, shared podcasts, and took long walks. There was no rushing. Trust returned, little by little. Some days, a memory would catch me, the soft sound of Tom's voice at the dealership or the way. Emily had once brought me coffee late at night when I worked on plant reports. Those memories sometimes stung, but they also reminded me of the ordinary joys that live inside a marriage. I did not want to lose those memories to anger. I kept the good ones like small treasures. I still go to the same Honda dealership for service. Tom remembers me and gives me the same professional greeting. Once, as I sat in the waiting area, I noticed a couple arguing softly about who should go inside to pick up a car. It was an ordinary scene. Tom looked over and offered a small, understanding smile. For a moment, I felt peace. The past had been hard, but life continued with small, ordinary steps. If a single lesson came from all of this, it is that careful work matters. I could have reacted out of anger, made dramatic choices, and created a larger scene. Instead, I gathered facts, kept my composure, and chose a measured path. That approach did not remove pain. It did not erase the betrayal, but it did make the path forward clearer and fair. The recall notice was a small paper with a technical message at the top, but underneath it revealed a truth I had not expected. A signature on a service ticket, a credit card receipt, and a photocopy of a license made the difference between suspicion and fact. Once the facts were clear, so were the choices. I chose to protect what I could and to rebuild carefully. Years later, I sometimes think about how small things can steer a life. A VIN number on a printed page, a date, and a signature. The evidence did not carry excitement or drama. It carried clarity, and clarity, combined with steady work, helped me build a quieter life based on honesty. That is what I wanted and what I worked toward. A life where trust could grow again through patient, ordinary actions.